This is gotta be the most try-hard, pseudo-intellectual, cringy thing I have ever read. So yeah, I'd recommend it. And in this video, I'm gonna give you 5 reasons why. So let's get started. Number 1. Choose your suffering. Mark teaches a reworked version of the Buddhist concept of Four Noble Truths in that all life is suffering. To quote one of his articles, everyone wants to have an amazing job and financial independence, but not everyone wants to work 60-hour long weeks, long commutes, and obnoxious paperwork, to navigate arbitrary corporate hierarchies in the blasé confines of infinite cubicle hell. People want to be rich without the risk, without the sacrifice. Basically, wanting something is not the same as the entire package of what it would take to earn it. Wanting to be swole is one thing. However, if you are not also willing to, go to the gym and eat that bodybuilding chicken that looks like bathroom caulk, it's not going to work out, bro. Even if you have the world's largest mansion, you still have to figure out how to take care, maintain, and clean that mansion. Granted, some problems are better than others, but we're getting to that. The experience is not the mountaintop. The experience is the climb. Frankly, the climb is the mountaintop, because if you're not enjoying the process, you're not actually enjoying it. You may want that end result, but that's just called shiny object syndrome. One of the things that Mark brings up that literally sounds like the worst self-help advice ever created is the concept that you should take complete responsibility for everything that happens in your life. And that is the most cult sounding thing. You're please just keep sending that money in. Don't phone your parents. Just keep sending in the money kind of thing that you could ever possibly hear. And you should buy in. We've all heard the statement, with great power comes great responsibility. However, with great responsibility comes great power. And the great way that Mark teaches this concept is by using the example of if you woke up one day and there was just a baby placed on your doorstep, it would completely not be your fault. However, it is your responsibility. You can't just ignore the baby, or if you do, that is just your choice. However, it is your responsibility to do with it or to contact the authorities or go about this however you think is best. That is your responsibility. It is the same way in life. And this is something that I really just connected with. It's a lot of the times you hear the just take responsibility for things, but it always comes with the connotation that also this is because it's your fault. And what I really like about this is that nuance, is that it's not your fault, it is your responsibility. Because so much of the stuff that happens to us in our life is either just complete chance, bad fortune, etc., etc., etc. And the thing is that if you do not choose to take responsibility for any of these things that happen in your life, the default response will kick in, which is to push the blame on the someone or something else. And the reason why this is the default response is because it feels so good. You're pushing it off on someone else because once again, it's not your fault. It's the politicians, it's the government, it's the economy, interperson, or global cause here completely solves the issue. And one of the things that the internet has objectively made worse is it has made it so much easier than it already was to push all of your problems and the blame onto other people, thus making it not your responsibility. Because in our culture, and particularly on the internet, we value the victim. The victim receives a higher level of status than, just the normal Joe Schmo. However, whenever you have the not my responsibility syndrome, pouring gas on the fire, it makes it so people want to be a victim. And if they're not the victim, if they're, potentially the richest billionaire in the world, they will have to invent their victimhood, because it is only through this victimhood that they are able to achieve their wanted sympathy and attention. So basically, victims suck. Number 2, suffering is good. So Mark starts this chapter out with the absolutely insane, but absolutely true story of a Japanese second lieutenant who was stranded on a Philippine island who never stopped fighting World War II for 30 years after it ended. And after he was contacted and told, like, hey dude, like the war ended like 3 seasons of Lost ago, he was like, oh shoot, okay, I guess I gotta come back to Japan. And then he did come back to Japan, and after living in a jungle, being shot at for years, he became incredibly depressed because he thought that Japan was not living up to the standard that he had, fought for 30 years for. Ipso facto, the lesson that you can learn from that little Aesop's fable is that the meaning that you assign your suffering makes a situation good or bad. The context in which a situation happens completely determines how you feel about that situation. If someone puts a gun to your head and says, you have to run or I'm going to kill you, that would be horrifying. However, if you're running a marathon because you've lost all this weight, it's this liberating experience. It's the exact same action, however, completely different feeling. The important thing that you have to learn in life is that you need to learn that there are good and bad values which determine what makes a situation feel the way it does. Mark states that good values are reality-based, socially constructive, and immediate and controllable. Bad values are superstitious, socially destructive, and not immediately controllable. As an example, popularity is a very bad value to, put all of your self-worth into because you don't control it. You cannot force people to like you. There are things that you can do to, push the betting odds in your favor. However, you cannot force anybody to like you. And if you base everything in your life off of that, you can be severely disappointed and at best extremely paranoid, waiting for the other shoe to drop, because all that has to happen is someone doesn't like you. Now your life has no meaning. And if you base your life on bad values, your life will be terrible regardless of how much outside success that you have, because one of the true things that you must learn is that outside success, these emblems and achievements that you get are often just like byproducts of the process. However, if you have an internally validating process that you have, you will always be happy because you're doing the good work, and you know that inside because you have given that value to your suffering. Number 3, you are wrong about everything. There's the famous Michael Jordan quote, not the one about taking it personally, but about, like how he was really bad at basketball, which is why he improved, that's how he became, the greatest of all time. We need to learn that growth in life is an infinite game. You are constantly just getting better. You're just slowly going from wrong to less wrong as your life goes on, without ever actually reaching that end goal. And by that definition, absolute certainty is almost always a marker of being absolutely wrong. Often the greatest evil in the world has come from people who were absolutely certain and not willing to bend in any way that their way of life was the correct way to do it, and anybody else's was wrong. Real life is not like that. Reality is full of uncertainty and unsureness because life is complicated, and we are always trying to get better at the things that we do without ever coming to the one true answer, because that doesn't exist. Truly, the man who knows everything can learn nothing. So Manson postulates in the text that the more something threatens your identity, the more you will avoid it. Anything that threatens to change how your brain sees itself, either how successful or even unsuccessful you see yourself, is scary because, historically speaking, what we know is safe. The new is unknown and scary because we don't know what's going to happen. And because of that, we are so much more willing to stay in the hell that we know rather than try something out and, possibly receive great benefits because of that. And so I would just sum this up in the way that a man is what room he is in. You do not exist. You are constantly changing. There is no one true identity that you have. And then if it ever appears that it's you versus the world, it's almost certainly you versus yourself. Number 4, you are not special. Whenever you were little, you probably had your grandma tell you, hey, you were special. Well, Mark is here to tell you that she is lying. Self-esteem for self-esteem's sake is just a narcissistic ego pump that makes you worse for having done it. And the thing that I find most interesting is that Mark states that the deeper our problem is, the more helpless we feel against that problem. So the more entitlement we use to counteract it. So, and the ego may be manifesting itself in a way that you are not immediately thinking of. Because while yes, it can be, I am great and I deserve special attention because of it, it can also be, I'm terrible. I'm just this, miserable little worm. Because of that, I deserve special treatment. This is still the ego, just like this mirror version of it. Your ego wants you to be at the center of attention always because, it likes it up there. It's pretty nice. I'm just a special little guy. I'm just a special little being. I'm a human being. I'm just a little guy. Just a special little guy. By definition, we are going to be average at the majority of things because that's how human beings work. However, ego doesn't like that. So that means we have to either be the best or the worst. Both of these are terrible for you. The way that you actually become good at something is that you do incredibly ego-destroying things. You accept that I'm not very good at this and you work very hard to accomplish, a goal. That's the only way that you achieve that. And that is the opposite of entitlement that ego wants to provide for you. That, hey, once again, it's not my fault, so therefore not my responsibility. You have to go against that. And it's only the people who are able to acknowledge that, hey, I am not special. I need to work to get better at something who will ever actually accomplish that. Number 5, you are going to die. Did you know that you're going to die someday? This is what Mark is saying. I don't know if I, frankly believe it for myself, but this is allegedly the story. Mark brings up the psychological work of Ernest Becker, who claims that the majority of what people do in this life is just claims to immortality. It's ways to extend themselves beyond their death. The reason why people do great things like build highways or whatever is that, their name can be on the side of it and they will live on through these works or through these projects. And while this drive may result in many good things and also many terrible things, it is actually a poison. It is only after that we acknowledge that this illogical quest for immortality is the true shackles that bind us. It is this existential anxiety that, surrounds us. And through accepting our death, we can truly see clearly what our values should be and what we should do to accomplish them. Truly, the love that you receive is equal to the love that you give. Only when you fully immerse yourself in your death can you truly be alive, because you choose to be alive. Mark Manson has a way of writing that makes you think that this guy is like a complete moron. And frankly, sometimes he is. But occasionally he's got just those nuggets of wisdom that make it all worth it. Just like watching this video. It's gonna make it all worth it, guys.